And welcome. We are here with Valerie Colbert-Osamuede, who is the Deputy Director of Labor Relations. And we are excited to have her here during our National Public Employee Recognition Week. Welcome, Valerie Colbert-Osamuede. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Marcus, for having me. Always a topic that I love talking about. Usually don't do it so formally, but thank you for having me.
And I just figured we had to try it formally because everyone should hear the wealth of knowledge and information, as they will hear some of that when we are along with the panel. But I wanted the opportunity to talk with you one-on-one as well to make sure that this information gets out about public service. I think you would be one of the poster children, I would say, poster women, if we wanted to do a talent acquisition campaign around attracting the best and brightest talent to the city of Detroit and to municipalities in general, that we could use you as a template of sorts to say something that I think you have said often, that some of the things that you've learned along your journey in public service, you still use today. They're still relevant today in your current context. So take us back, because I learned 29 years is a long time or not, depending, but 29 years in this day and time is a very long time to be with one employer. So I always open with the same thought and question, Val. Being a brilliant mind as you are, and probably were all those many years ago, what drew you to public service?
And I think one of the things that I said earlier was that public service found me. And one of the reasons why I say that is because of the family that I grew up in. My father was a pastor for 35 years until his death in 1998. And my mom, of course, was his partner in all of that. He was one of those pastors that during the 1967 riots walked the streets, gave the calm to the community, talked to the people, tried to get them to go back into their homes and to diffuse the situation, where many pastors were called on to do that. He was one of those. I also mentioned that back when I was growing up, the DPS, Detroit Public Schools, were they had many school boards by region. And my father sat on the Region 5, that's the region we were in, school board. My mother was a big PTA supporter. And just being a part of the church in general, our doors were always open. I can't remember when someone outside of our immediate family did not live with us, did not at some point stay in our home for not just a night, but for a long time, to get on their feet or whatever. And I'll even laugh at my brother today. My brother, when we were back in eighth grade, he brought home one of our classmates who had been kicked out of his house, and he ended up staying with us throughout the remainder of the school year. Just something that my parents didn't want him going back to a bad situation. That public service found me because that's just the way in which I was reared. I had a great quote that Pope Francis said, that every man, every woman who has to take up the service of government must ask themselves two questions. Do I love my people in order to serve them better? Am I humble? And do I listen to everybody, to diverse opinions in order to choose the best path? If you don't ask those questions, your governance will not be good. This embodies everything that I believe. I believe that you have to have a passion for what you're doing and the people that which you are working with and actually serve. I believe you have to have humility, because with humility, you learn a lot of things. You learn from the person that mops the floors all the way to the person who is in charge of a division or on the 11th floor, which is our mayor's office. And then you have to be able to listen. listen to other ideals, other opinions, other ways in which to solve an issue. And one of the things that drew me to the city of Detroit, hooked me, made me stay, were really the people that I work with. You know, I started there, I had a clerkship when I was in law school, and it was so fantastic because those lawyers, and one in particular was Deborah Ross Adams, she was on the bench for a while. She wanted to make sure that we had the best experience as law clerks, not just filing, not just cleaning out closets or things like that you sometimes do give legal interns in general. But she's the one who wanted me to see the process. She took me to motion calls. She took me to depositions. She showed me, she was in the property division. And then at the time, we were doing condemnations over in Brush Park. She showed me where that was. She taught me showed me how that process worked. And when I left that particular that internship or that law clerk at the end of the summer, experience to people who were in the private sector, you know, who had worked for, you know, firms, they couldn't believe the breadth of experience that I had. And I will tell you, I even learned something from being in the property section that helped me in my course with property in law school. So, and then that is so important, that if you can bring people in when they're students and give them that love of public service and what they will be doing in their position, you will have them wanting to become a part of the organization. They had a passion for the city, and they really wanted your experience as a student to be a positive one, because basically a lot of those people came back to the city because of their positive experience as an intern or a law clerk. So I can say that I was, first I was an intern or law clerk under Deborah Ross Adams. I'll never forget that. And she's the one who took me to my first court case and deposition and all of those things that you read about in law school. She actually made sure I had the experience as a law student to actually see them, help her prepare for them, and be a part of it. And so all of that was just great to me, because when I went back to law school, nobody had that kind of experience except people who had worked for a governmental agency. They had the experience. So when I came to the law department in 1991, I was in the labor and employment section. And I will add this. One of my greatest mentors was Brenda Braceful. When I became a lawyer, she was, you know, she was the lawyer, okay? So she was our special litigator, and I don't care what question, how small, how big, what seemed to be inconsequential, you could always go to her, ask the question, get an answer. You know, she'd take you under your wing. I didn't work in the same section as Brenda, but she was always there to listen to, you know, your closing arguments, your opening arguments. Should I ask this? Give you great direction. So for me, she was a great mentor in the law and how to practice the law. So she's on this panel today. So I thank you, Brenda, for that wealth of experience that you provided to me when I was a young attorney, because it meant the world to me. I mean, any question that you had to ask, you could go to Brenda and at least get direction. Maybe not always get the answer, but you at least get direction. So I just found the city full of people who were experienced, who were willing to impart their knowledge. That was the experience that hooked me into wanting to remain. Not only did you have people who were willing to back you, give you an education outside of what you studied, but, you know, to just be a helper to you. So that was the city that I came into, and certainly the city that I hope to leave behind for any young folks. So I have enjoyed most of my career with the city of Detroit because of the people that I have connected with. And then, of course, the issues that we encounter that, impact not only, the citizens of the city of Detroit, but sometimes folks in the state of Michigan as a whole. So, some of the things that we deal with or dealt with in the law actually had an impact on the state. So I just, as I've told you many times before, Marcus, I've loved public service. And there's a quote that I want to give you from Pope Francis, and it says, "Every man, every woman who has to take up the service of government must ask themselves two questions. Do I love my people in order to serve them better? Am I humble? And do I listen to everybody, to diverse opinions in order to choose the best path? If you don't ask those questions, your governance will not be good." Humility and listening is one of the key components to public service.
Wonderful. Thank you, Val. And I'm moving to Dr. Jan. I call her Dr. Jan Anderson. But all three of you could have probably, with your brain trust, either created a phenomenal company, or you could have gone into many industries with that talent. And so I'm always infuriated because people sometimes think of city jobs or government jobs as people that aren't the brain trust, aren't the most committed, aren't the most passionate. And here are, among many examples that are in the room, 3 examples of people who could have gone on to do what the world might ascribe much worth and value to in other industries. So I'm going to lead with that, Jan, Dr. Jan. What made you stay all of these years? Before you answer that, Brenda, now how many years were you with the city? Brenda Braceful?
29.
29. And Val, how many years have you been with the city?
29.
29. And Dr. Jan, how many years have you been with the city?
29.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we need to play.
I didn't even plan it that way.
I know.
I didn't even plan it that way. I didn't check your years of service or anything. I promise. I didn't even plan it that way. Yeah.
Well, Marcus, that's a tremendous welcome. It's a tremendous honor for me to be put on the same panel with Miss Braceful and Valerie Colbert-Osamuede. It's amazing the people I've met in my 29 years with the city. Everybody, I felt so at home. I'm a lifelong Detroit resident. I always say I'm 100 years in the city limits because my grandfather got here after the Great War, and we're such proud Detroiters. It gave our family our whole livelihood. That's often been forgotten in our lifetime, that this great city is one of the cities that built this country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. And a lot of times it built it on the backs of people. It, what the Lord giveth, the Lord tooketh away, more than once. But my story in public service starts with Grandpa coming back from the Great War. My grandfather had been orphaned. We were Irish immigrants through Canada in northern Michigan, and both of his parents died when he was 11 years old, and he became the breadwinner for 2 younger sisters and himself.
Wow.
And you talk about a humility. I think that people of previous generations just had such gut checks everywhere they went. But here he came to Detroit, and he got the opportunity because he had such a knack with animals. He became the first curator of the Belle Isle Zoo and lived on Belle Isle for 12 years. Wow. My mother, her 3 older siblings, and my grandparents lived in the maintenance and repair quarters right by the White House on Belle Isle until the Great Depression, and they became homeless overnight. The city went through just this devastating round of cuts, 20%. We have some of Grandpa's historical records, and it's beyond what we've experienced in the last decade, right? And they were cut, and of course then there was no unemployment, and that's just when relief is being developed. You know, I tell you that story. It is unique having lived on Belle Isle. But I tell you that story because it's just part of the urban fabric and part of why we all belong in a big city, that it has a place for everybody. And as someone not of African American descent, it's been so enriching to me that my mother was insistent, we are Detroiters and we're living here. But see, she knew her whole livelihood had come from this city. And so I felt that as a young person, there is a greater good. You can look in, you know, again, I had a lot of opportunities, there, you know, the resources to take time off so I could go to graduate school and 10 years of college to get a PhD. But, you know, everything isn't about how much money am I going to make. And that's hard to say because the things that are going wrong in our country have put us all in this position of insecurity. We need security. Clearly, we have to make a living. We're responsible for ourselves. But I've never looked at my career as how do I make the last dollar? I wanted to do something that I knew was meaningful, that connected me to other people like all you here today. It's been so enriching. So that's the first thing that I would say about my career is I believe in the greater good. I believe there's a benefit, a collective and a benefit beyond myself. And I want to be part of solutions at all time. What I did in my career that served me really well, I utilized the city's education leave provision. So in 1992, I actually got 14 months education leave and did, basically it was 4 semesters at Baltimore at the University of Maryland, and then came back to my job. The city held my job for me. So that was a really key thing. They invested in me and I wanted to invest in the city in return. But I always kept kind of one foot in the university world, in the civic world. I've always kept a volunteer activity going on. At the present time, I'm helping an old ethnic club, 100-year-old ethnic club, down by Old Tiger Stadium to do a strategic plan for its second generation. And unfortunately, the pandemic is a memorable 100th anniversary, right? Mm-hmm. But you know, my ties to Wayne State, I've been an adjunct professor there for 23 years. And teaching, that's kept me sane more than once. And I think Miss Braceful could attest. We might have had 1 or 2 conversations about that. But, you know, you want to be connected to all the great things. There's a lot of negative things in the world, in our face. But you want to be connected to positive things, to people who want to do good, who want to be there for each other. I can't say enough about that. The final thing I think I would offer, localism. You know, we're all in the global society and we're all, you know, we talk about China and we don't know what's going on in China. And I do think it's a privilege to get, you know, to see the world. I've traveled extensively thanks to having a job with paid vacation, you know, but the best things in our life are going to be the things right here. My next door neighbor, you know, I live in the city where my mother, my grandfather, my uncles lived and died. And so I have that connection. I can go to those places that they were at. So I think local living, I think there's a whole politics to that. That's a different panel. But I want to be a voice for that as well, to commit and to invest in your home. There's nothing to me that's been more rewarding than that. And again, I appreciate being asked my experience.
We're honored to have you, all of you so far. And you mentioned something about the greater good, which is a great segue to go to Byron Spivey. I am often on Facebook, always on work time, but I'm on Facebook. I'm often seeing Byron working and the greater good work that he's doing during this pandemic it warms my heart, Byron, to see the feeding that's going on at the rec centers and the support that we're giving to people through public servants like you. What has made you stay with the city? What has your journey through public service been like, and how rewarding that must be during a time that is a time that none of us could have ever imagined, that you're actually touching lives? Not that you don't regularly, but I'm sure it must be very rewarding, the work that you're doing now. So welcome this afternoon, and tell us a little bit.
Well, thank you for having me. And yes, it is very rewarding. To give you a good round number, my time started with the city 29 years ago.
Wow.
Wow.
I didn't plan it that way.
Right. So, yep, I just made my 29th year. Actually, I was supposed to be in the business world. My major was hotel and restaurant management. Came home one summer, worked as a play leader. My first assignment was at Maharis Recreation Center. I was like, man, it's pretty cool. I was young, teaching the younger kids athletics, softball, whatever. It was great. Graduated from college, came back home, had a job as a management trainee at the Hampton Inn. And then as I was working, what happened? The letter came in the mail. Hey, this city, you didn't come back last year. This year, we want you back. And I came back, and I've been there ever since. I've worked my way up from play leader to where I am now with RCS. I probably really could have been in management, but I think I enjoyed the frontline service much more. The opportunity to touch young people, young adults, senior citizens, just everybody in the community. I never thought that I would enjoy it as much as I do.
Yeah.
But it was a great job for me. I think in recreation, you have to be a people person.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm a people person.
Absolutely.
You know, I try to have a pleasant demeanor with everyone, and I do get that back. So it's very touching to have an event where I got seniors learning how to use their electronics, or have Halloween and be able to have animals right there for the kids to touch, exotic animals, kangaroos. Jan came over and saw the kangaroo at Halloween.
Really?
You know, so, you know, it's things like that, being able to just give a kid or anybody a little bit of something that they never had or never experienced.
Yeah.
I think it's great. And so,
I know you don't think of yourself as management, but you run a center. And I often espouse that is management. If you decided to walk out tomorrow, don't do it. But if you decide to walk out tomorrow and find a building and program it with these same kind of programs, you would be a business owner in recreation. So you're running an entire enterprise. And that's why it's an interesting spot that you sit in when you say your supervisor, you might not have the end of the day decisions. Of course, I'm sure you could lobby Jan at the time when she was the director for anything you needed, because that's the kind
exactly.
Right.
You kind of see yourself as a leader who runs an entire center and knows what budget is required, knows what staff is required, knows what services are required to meet the needs of the citizens. So you're not just a supervisor, you're a manager too. And I wanted to make sure I highlighted that point for you, Mr. Spivey. I appreciate that.
I appreciate it.
I'm going to go to another supervisor who, again, is like a manager. I would say, Patricia Henderson, if you went out, and the women aren't out leading us at all, but we got some women leaders here. But if you went out in the marketplace and said, I'm going to do a street paving business, or I'm going to do a cityscape business, you could go into business for yourself. You know the machinery it takes, you know the people it takes. I see Kim Jones is here. She could do the same thing in landscaping. So I'm always asking this question: why public service? We see that we grabbed Byron, sending him a letter and bringing him back. We grabbed Jan, we gave her all that time for educational leave. We grabbed Val through Brenda by leading her through this. We grabbed Brenda early on. How did we grab Patricia Henderson?
So my background is a little different. I came from retail. Retail. I was a manager for Walden Bookstore. At that time, I had been there, and it was like, okay, I need a break. So I decided to apply for the city and for construction, and they called me. It was my first time. I always wanted to be the person to hold the stop sign. That was everybody's goal to be. I would be the flag girl. So
Wow.
I applied. They called me. I started all this one season, and I got laid off. And then they sent me a letter to come back. That very next year, they kept me. So I was like, wow, do I really want to do it, or do I really want to go back to being the manager? Because I was running a multi-million-dollar bookstore. So I went from that to the city. So I really went. So it grabbed me because, and like Miss Jan said, it wasn't about the money. It was about the experience that I had here. I was making much money doing what I was doing in retail. And then I came here and I was like, I found a passion. And that's what grabbed me here. And I ran into people, and I started as a laborer and worked my way up. I started at the bottom and worked my way up to supervisor now. So it started as a passion, and I had some great mentors here to get me to where I am right now.
Who are a few of them? Can you tell us a few of them?
I had, my first mentor was Bobby Harris. He was a foreman here. He had like almost 30 years before he passed away suddenly. Then to get me the position that I am, to the love of resurfacing, was Donald Walton. That was his operation. He passed away suddenly. And I took over his spot, and he instilled that passion, especially for resurfacing for me. And I saw how much he loved it. I'm like, I can't do an operation and half-heartedly do it. So I took on it as I owned it, just like he did. And that's where I am now. And then my next mentor, who we just lost over the weekend, was Mr. Palm, to get me to this spot where I am right now.
Wow.
So,
and so I'm kind of hearing a common thread, and I want to ask this question of the group before I go to Ms. Walker. A lot of you have gone through the ranks in various areas to get, many of you in leadership, or to get into the roles that you're in. What do you say about this public service that might be happening now, where people don't want to go through the ranks or go through the ranks to get the experience? Any of you?
It's with the new generation that's coming in, that we hire seasonals, and they come in, and for them, they think it should be easy, or everything should be easy. And for me, I come off as hard because I tell them I have no empathy, I have no sympathy, because when I was doing it as a laborer, I didn't have the heavy equipment. I didn't have the things that they had. I had to strenuously use my back. I had to physically really work. So to them, I'm just like, I don't have no empathy for you, because it's grit. It's really grit. It's really grinding. They don't understand. They think I just got here. I'm like, no, I started from the bottom. And you have to love what you do. And I tell them all the time, you have to put yourself into it. It's rewarding. Like I said, I have 22 years. I'm sorry, I'm not at the 29 club yet. But it becomes rewarding if you, like you said, you don't think about the money. It's a passion. And I have a degree in political science and government. I could be out, like you said, in the other world, but I'd rather be here, serving here, making a difference here, because it's a difference. I love the city. I love it. I love the people in the city. The citizens, they are so hilarious. And you get to meet all these different people. I get to hear all these wonderful stories, as Byron said, from the senior citizens. It's great stories, great history that you learn just from talking to a stranger.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I want to ask some of the other panelists to jump in. What do you think about this, going through the ranks versus coming in and going to the top?
I guess if I may join in, Ms. Henderson understands that service because she served at all those levels. The service delivery model is an organization with all sorts of different roles and processes. And you might, some call it the deep state, but that's what that's what makes a service work. So for me to have served in different capacities, to have been the director of, to have been an administrator in a department, and now I've elected to go to a planning role. Well, but I understand operations. I've been in that. So I'm a believer in working your way up and in working in a number of capacities, because that's what a large organization is built of, all the roles.
Yeah. Val or Brenda, you want to chime in there?
I think one thing this pandemic has taught us, that in order to properly address a problem, you have to be able to look at it horizontally. You know, you have to look at the big picture, but you also have to be able to look at it vertically. You know, when you say we're going to have increase the testing, okay, what does it take to make that happen? And sometimes it's helpful when you have people who are at the executive level who have come up through the ranks. I think they have a better sense of what are the details that are necessary that you have to address to implement a plan. Because, and again, I'm not calling any names and I don't want to be political, but we can see the difference when you have a plan and then you have a way, or you have the means to execute that plan, how things happen. And you make decisions based on that information, and you also know how to roll it out. And I think, you know,